All right. We start everything off with the third step prayer. If you want to turn to page 63 in your big book and follow along if you'd like. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Okay. Pretty close to where we are. We're on page 65. We're talking about step 4 today, among other things that we'll be talking about. But right now, working on step 4, and we are just at the point where we say we were usually as definite as this example. And Bill's going to read the entire example, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Bill?
Okay, Bill Alcoholic from New Jersey. All right, I'll read this example here. I'm resentful at the cause and affects my. He's got 3 different columns set up here. And Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife, told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get my job at the office. And it affects my sex relations, self-esteem with fear bracketed, sex relations, self-esteem with fear bracketed again, security, self-esteem with fear bracketed again. And the next one, Mrs. Jones. And the cause, she's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. And the last column affects my personal relationship, self-esteem with fear in brackets. And the next one I'm resentful at, my employer. The cause, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing. Threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. And affects my self-esteem with fear bracketed and security. And the last one, I'm resentful at my wife. The cause, misunderstands and nags, likes Brown, wants the house put in her name, and affects my pride, personal, sex relations, security with fear bracketed again.
Yeah, so you can see here there's a few things that we talk about with our step 4. In this case, we're talking about individuals. Remember, step 4 could be against politics, and it could be against an idea, a resentful of that. But in this case, we're talking about individuals. And then you're resentful at this person, okay? And the cause is really very simple. That's one of the things about the step 4, is not to go into all the details of the resentment. It's just, what is the basic cause? In the beginning here, Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. Okay, that's just very simple, very straightforward, and what it affects. The things that we're talking about here with regard to resentments, if you look back on page 64 at the bottom, we found that our 1 was self-esteem is being affected. 2, our pocketbooks. 3, our ambitions. 4, our personal relationships. 5, including sex. And 6 is our security. It's on page 65. And then down towards the bottom here with my wife, also pride. That's also affected. And so you can see here that there are a number of things that are impacted, and those are good things to be thinking about. What are the resentments? What's the basic cause? Very simple statement. And then what does it affect? Does it affect my self-esteem? Does it affect my security? Does it affect my personal relationships, etc.? And one of the things here is that we've kind of highlighted too, is that on self-esteem, it's the fear is really what we're going after there. Trying to find it here. Our conduct is a part of this. Our fears are a part of this. Our harms are a part of this, and you just want to keep it very simple. But in this case, if I was doing, for example, my step 4, and I said, Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife, and then I said the other cause was he told my wife of my mistress, and number 3, Mr. Brown may get my job at the office. Okay, and so if I was to do a step 5, that's about as simple as it is that you would be explaining it to your sponsor or another trusted individual that you could share with. And then you would just talk about real quickly that this was affecting my sex relations, my self-esteem, and some fear there, and security. Those are all things that are being impacted by the causes of the reasons why I'm resentful at Mr. Brown. So it's really simple to some extent, but the other part of this is that you want to be thorough and also provide enough detail where it actually makes sense, something that you can relate to and that you can share with another person in your step 5. So doing your step 4 should be really twofold. One is you want to make sure that it's thorough and complete. You want to make sure it's accurate. And then I guess 3 things. And you want to make sure that it's something that can be easily shared with another person without going into a story, a long drawn out kind of explanation, that type of thing. We're not looking for that. We're just looking for the simple parts of what we're trying to get across to this other individual and get out into the open. Bill?
Yeah, basically what happened here is Bill Wilson put a diagram in here so that we could understand how to do step 4. And you can find worksheets. They're all over the internet. The Keystone Group has worksheets, and I think they help. They're a good thing. If you want to, some sponsors don't want to use worksheets. They just want to use their sponsees to use a blank piece of paper. Whatever your sponsor says, I go along with that. It really doesn't matter one way or another how you do it, as long as you do it. And like Leo mentioned, we're not writing a book here. We're just trying to put down exactly what happened in a few words. And if you look through this and count all the words, in any one of these resentments, they'll never use more than 19 words in any one of these columns. We're not writing a book. We're not writing a whole bunch of stuff of what happened and what the person did and what they said and what we said. We're just trying to almost make like an outline so that when we get to step 5, it'll jog our memory so we'll have something to talk about. Okay, we're on the bottom of page 65. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that the world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. But the more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. Our moments of triumph were short-lived.
Yes, and remember that your step 4 is not about the mechanics. It's really about the experience you get from it. So that's kind of one of the things that you kind of that you want to consider as you're doing it. And ultimately what you're trying to do is master these resentments and get past them, get over them, and get beyond them. And the other thing that you should be looking at here and realizing is that, as they said in the beginning here, is that the first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. Sure, other people have faults, but the bottom line is that if you really get down and sit with this, and you're open and honest about it, there's a lot of it that you can, most of it you can point back at yourself at and realize that you were a major cause of some of these resentments. Bill?
Okay, we're on the first new paragraph on page 66. It is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found that it is fatal, for when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die.
Absolutely. And the other thing to remember here is, these resentments are taking up space in our heads rent free. And it's stuff that is the things that we to hating someone or something. It's the stuff that's going to keep us up at night. And what we're trying to do is realize that not being able to master these resentments can actually be fatal, and cause us to go back to drink. And so you really have to dig deep and be honest with yourself and try to open up for this spiritual experience that we're trying to get across to you, so that you can get past these resentments. This next paragraph is a must. Bill?
Okay, but basically what Bill is doing here, he's giving us some reasons why we should do this, and the book is actually threatening us with death. It's telling us that if we keep on holding on to these resentments and harboring them and keeping them, it's going to be fatal, and it makes us drink again. That's why it's fatal for us. It says the insanity of alcohol returns, and we drink again. When we get cut off from the sunlight of the spirit, we don't drink, and then the insanity comes back. First, the insanity of alcoholism comes back, and then we drink. And the last line he said, and with us to drink is to die. In other words, this book is threatening us with death at this point. Okay, we're on the next paragraph. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had the power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol.
Okay, and so we're talking about trying to do this to get over your anger, to get past that, because that's going to cloud your progress, and while it's okay for others to be angry at times, it's not really good for us, and it just festers these resentments, and it's not good for us. So you're looking at the list. You got to look at it from a different angle, mainly from the angle that you caused a lot of this stuff, and you start to actually see the error in your ways. The power that these resentments have over us is really what we're trying to dispel and get rid of. And we're going to see how that's done here in the next few paragraphs. Where he asks the question, we saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? Bill's going to help us and answer that. And you can't wish them away. any more than alcohol. And let me talk a little bit about that. This self-will, self-knowledge, to try to do this under your own strength is just not possible. And just wishing that you were not an alcoholic doesn't work. And as all of us have come to know over the years. Bill?
Yeah, basically what Bill's doing us here is he's giving us some logical reasons why we need to get rid of this stuff. And he's telling us to look at it from a different angle. Most of us were looking at our resentments as, how can I get even with that person? How can I get back at them? Now we're supposed to change the way we're looking at things. And we're supposed to look at it as, these people and these resentments are actually dominating us. These things are destroying my life. They're not destroying the lives of the people that I have a resentment against. They're living in my head rent free. So we're supposed to look at this stuff as it's hurting us. It's being bad for us. And whether it's fancied or real, it doesn't matter if you made up the resentment or it's a real resentment or you think somebody did something that they didn't do. It still has the same effect on us. And the effect is it had the power to actually kill. And then he asks us, we saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? So the book's asking us a question. How do we master them? Now it's going to start to answer that in this next paragraph. In the bottom paragraph on page 66, this was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, they, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done.
And this prayer that we just said here is really what they consider as the step 4 prayer. So notice how Bill has taken this and turned it around so that instead of having a resentment or being angry at these folks, you basically admit that there's probably some sickness, that they're ill in some manner or fashion with regard to their spiritual abilities and strength, and how can you help them? This is kind of a tribute to the step 12, but bottom line is turn it around and ask how you can help this person, and by doing that, you're mastering your resentment. You're getting past all of that. You're looking at ways that you can help somebody, and in doing so, you're helping yourself and getting yourself into a better frame of mind, and that is a really good thing, a really good thing. Bill?
Yeah, well, what's happening here, we're starting to make spiritual progress. Instead of looking at people as being evil and we're going to hate their guts, we're supposed to look at people that did something wrong to us as being spiritually sick, because it's easier not to hate a sick person than it is not to hate a evil person. So Bill's telling us we're supposed to look at these people as though they're sick. And and when he says we did not like their symptoms of being spiritually sick is what they did to us. And the way they disturbed us, well, our disturbance is the resentments that we got. And then he has this prayer in here. They call it the sick man prayer or the 4th step prayer, or whatever name you want to give it, because it doesn't really have a name. We're supposed to pray that we don't get angry. We're praying for ourselves not to be angry. This is a whole new ball game. A lot of times people will tell you you're not allowed to pray for yourself. This book says I can pray for myself not to be angry. And that's exactly what we're doing here. Okay, the next paragraph. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one.
Okay, and so this is based on what Bill just said, and building on that, we avoid retaliation or argument. That's a big one. As soon as you start to get into an argument with a person, you've lost all progress, and positive outcomes are gone. And so you don't want to retaliate or cause an argument. And think about it. You wouldn't treat a sick person that way, so don't treat this person that way either. And if you can get past all of that, this is really where this growth is coming in. That spiritual growth that Bill just mentioned is the ability to look kindly upon another person and look at how you can be helpful to them, and not destroy that chance because you've become either retaliatory or argumentative. And while you can't be helpful to everyone, you should be able to ask your higher power for the guidance to be as helpful as possible to those that you actually can reach, and that's where we are. Bill?
Yeah, like Leo said, don't retaliate or argue with people, because if you do, that just starts a big fight, and everything just snowballs. Remember, we wouldn't treat sick people that way. And why? Because if we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. Back when we said the step 3 prayer, we said, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help. And in step 3 prayer, we're making a deal or a contract that we're going to try to help other people. And if we fight and argue with them, we won't be able to be helpful to them, because they won't want our help. They won't want to deal with us. They won't want to listen to us. And again, it tells us here, we can't be helpful to all people. We can't help everybody, but we can tolerate them, and we can show them love and kindness and tolerance. And we get that from God. God gives us that ability to do that. So some people we won't be able to help, but we don't have to hate their guts. Why? Because when we hate people's guts, it makes us miserable. This is the point Bill's trying to get across to us here. We have to stop hating people, because that makes us miserable. It raises our blood pressure. It gives us agita. It makes us lose sleep at night. And the people that we hate don't even know it. They sleep a nice, sound night's sleep. And so we just got to stop doing that stuff. Okay, the next paragraph on page 67. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and were willing to set these matters straight.
Okay, so this is really a big change for us, is putting out of our minds the wrongs of others had done, and we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Looking at ourselves and where we had gone wrong is really the exercise here. And they give you some references. Where have you been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Obviously, being frightened causes us to do things that we wouldn't otherwise do. This again is looking inwardly as opposed to outwardly, as far as looking for the mistakes. Now, obviously, it's not entirely our fault, and that's part of this, is realizing that others may be at fault, and we've just covered that with regard to other people may be sick, and how is it that you can be helpful to them. But at the same time, you want to look at yourself and see where it is that you've made mistakes, learn from it, and correct those mistakes, and be able to look at that as our own, and deal with them head on, very honestly, openly, and I would even add courageously. Bill?
Yeah, basically what this is the instructions for the next column. Some people do a 4-column inventory. I've heard people that do 5-column inventories, whatever your sponsor tells you to do. If you want to break the last column into 2 different parts, whatever. And it says, here's what we're supposed to look for. Where have we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? If you have those worksheets, those four things are on the last column, and they usually also add inconsiderate into that also. So this is where that came from. This is like that last column where we're supposed to look for our mistakes. That's what this is about. And we're supposed to put the wrongdoings of others out of our mind. We're not supposed to even be looking at the other person. We're supposed to be looking at what we did. We can't do anything about what somebody else does. I can do something about what I did. If I did something wrong, I can fix it. I can't fix something that somebody else did wrong. That's their business to fix that. And that's basically what he's telling us here. We're supposed to look at ourselves. And again, this is the instructions here. For most people believe it's column 4, and most people do a 4-column inventory. But again, if your sponsor tells you to do a 5 or a 6, or they add stuff to it, I'm not going to argue with that. But this is what the book says. The book says that this would be the instructions for the next column. Okay, now we're on the bottom of page 67. Notice that the word fear is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Miss Jones, the employer, and the wife. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It is an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did we not ourselves set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classified with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble.
Sure does. And it's not much to add to this right now, but just think in terms of the fact that the word fear is a part of this as much as this it touches every aspect of our lives. And remember, we're the fears that we have are very much in line with building of resentments and pointing fingers at other people. It's our own fear of facing the truth and being a part of it. Bill? Yeah,
this is now the next list in our inventory. It's going to be the fear list, and Bill's starting to give us here some instructions on how to do it. We're on the top of page 68, the first new paragraph. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. Wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about fears. We're talking about 3 different types of fears, more or less. The one is you're going to lose something that you have. The next one is you're not going to get something that you want. And then the last fear is you will find out what you did, what I did, something that you've done and get found out on. Why do we have these fears? Well, it's usually born out of ignorance, and what we need to do is and our own inability to look inwardly to ourselves and face it. So self-reliance obviously is a part of this, and your independence is important, but it doesn't take you everywhere. Even if you do have a lot of self-confidence, it's not going to carry you very far. It's definitely something that you're going to want to deal with. Bill?
Yeah, Bill's starting to give us instructions here on how to make this fear list or fear inventory. And what he's telling us here is we put them on paper. That's the instructions for column 1 in the fear inventory. First, we write down what all our fears are. We put them on paper. Then it says we ask ourselves why we had them. That's column 2. Why do we have these fears? And then column 3, Wasn't it because our self-reliance had failed us? If you have those worksheets, all of this stuff is written on the worksheets. Or again, you could just take a blank piece of paper and write all this stuff out yourself. Bill's giving us here instructions on how to do each individual inventory. All right, the next paragraph, the second paragraph on page 68. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so. But we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We are in the world to play the role he assigns. Just to the extent that we do as we think he would have us, we humbly rely upon him. Does he enable us to match calamity with serenity?
Yep, and this is something that's very internal to us. It is, we trust our higher power, and that's a big change for most of us, is to be able to find that higher power and then build a relationship with the higher power and be able to build some trust in that higher power that they are going to be able to come in and help us along the way. And we're here to answer to and play the part that your higher power assigns, and start relying on that as opposed to just relying on yourself. So we're making a transition here. We're building on our spiritual experience, and we're strengthening our relationship with our higher power. All so that we can address the fears that we have in regards to the things that we have as far as shortcomings. Bill?
Yeah, Bill is telling us here with this book that we're supposed to go from relying on ourselves to relying on God. If we could get rid of all of our fears all by ourselves, don't you think we would have done that by now? So Bill's telling us that we need to rely on God in order to get rid of our fears, because we just can't wish them away or make them just go away. Okay, the next paragraph on page 68. We never apologize to anyone for depending upon our Creator. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. Instead, we let him demonstrate through us what he can do. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. At once we commence to outgrow fear.
Right. And there's a good acknowledgement here when we start to have him remove these fears and direct our attention to what he would have us do or have us be. We commence to outgrow the fear that we had before, and it's an amazing kind of transition that you end up going through when you look at this honestly. And the other message here is that relying upon a higher power is not a sign of weakness; it's a sign of strength, and we just want to emphasize that as well. Bill?
Yeah, whatever the book says we ask for, we ask him, that's a prayer. This is the fear prayer in here. We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. And you can just read that, or you can add anything to it or embellish on it any way you want. That's a prayer. You're praying that God takes away your fears and helps you work through them. And then it says, and this is a promise, at once we commence to outgrow fear. Our fears don't go away. We start to outgrow them when we ask God's help. And that's why we do this inventory, so that we can get rid of our fears. Because fears dominate a lot of people's lives. A lot of our resentments are fear-based. The reason we resent other people is because we're afraid of them. You don't resent people that you're not afraid of. As soon as you're afraid of somebody, you wind up hating their guts because you're afraid of them. That's our response or our reaction to fear. Fear causes a lot of problems all over. And this is one way that we can start to get rid of our fears, by asking God to help us with them, and we commence to outgrow them. In other words, they don't go away instantly. We're going to start outgrowing our fears. Okay, we're on the bottom of page 68. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there, But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think they do not have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them?
Obviously, we don't want to pick sides here. What we're basically doing is looking at this and seeing how sex is used either as a weapon, as a way of dominance or power. And what you're trying to do is look at sex in such a way in that it's how is it that you can make things better for the other person that you may be with. And so the idea here is that sex is certainly an area where we need an overhaul, and it is something that we need to address accordingly. And between two people, it's something that is shared, and it's mutual, and it's equal. And it should be, how is it that I can make this other person feel better in light of my own needs? You're basically focusing on the other person. But by no means are we talking about either no sex or all sex or it's a balancing act, and it's something that should be in between. Bill?
Yeah, pretty basically what Bill's saying here. It's an individual thing, whatever your opinion of sex is. And AA wants to stay out of that, and we're supposed to stay out of that. Whatever anybody does is their own business, and we're not supposed to be the arbiter. That means we're not supposed to be the judge of what anybody else does, whether they do a lot of sex or a little bit of sex or whatever kind of sex they're having. That's their business, and we've got no business telling anybody what they're supposed to do. Okay, the first new paragraph on page 69. We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it.
So the good news here is that Bill is giving us questions to actually ask ourselves, and then that way we have something to answer when we look at whether we've been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate. Whom have we hurt? This is the beginnings of this is the basis of your step 8. And did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness, which you can probably answer yes to one or more of those things in the things that you're writing down. Where are we at fault? Where are we at fault? Not where the other person is at fault, but where are we at fault? And what should we have done instead? It's a good analysis of ourselves and our conduct, and it's a way for us to start to look at things in a more positive nature, and be able to take a look at it and then make an honest assessment of ourselves. Bill?
Yeah, this paragraph has the instructions for doing this here, sex inventory or sex list, where it says, whom have we hurt? That's column 1. Where it says, where were we at fault? That's column 2. And it says, we reviewed our own conduct over the years past. That's column 3. Where it says, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? That's column 4. And what should we have done instead? That's column 5. He's got the whole thing condensed here into this one little paragraph on the instructions on how we're supposed to write this out. And again, if you get those worksheets, it's already, well, all the columns are already laid out for you. So it's easier to do it the first time with worksheets. But again, some sponsors don't like using worksheets. Whatever your sponsor tells you, I go along with whatever your sponsor says, because I'm not going to get in between anybody and their sponsor. So, okay, we're on the next paragraph now on page 69. In this way, we try to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed.
Yeah, so we subjected each relationship to this test, and basically we're looking at, again, back up to the paragraph, where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? That's a big one here. We asked to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them, meaning how is it that you could be better and more accommodating and looking to the other person as something that you would want to do better by and help. And obviously this is, a very personal and private thing, as Bill has just said, and you should not take it lightly or selfishly. And that word selfish crops up a lot, and despised or loathed. So really kind of helping you to kind of see that sex is a positive thing. It's a natural thing, and it's something that should be, again, as I've said before, mutual, shared, and respected. Bill?
Yeah, he's talking about here shaping a sound ideal. An ideal is a goal or an aim where we're supposed to ask God to help us, make our goal for sex and what we're going to do and what our aim is. We ask God to mold our ideals. So wherever it says we ask God, again, that's a prayer. That's the first prayer in the sex inventory part. And we're supposed to look at this stuff and ask, was it selfish or not? Most alcoholics, everything we do is selfish. At least when we're still active alcoholics, all we think about is ourselves. And everything we do, whether it's our sex life or anything else, we do out of selfishness. And when we do something out of selfishness, it usually blows up somewhere down the line. It blows up in our face. So he's basically telling us here what we're supposed to look at and what we're supposed to ask ourselves. Like it said in the paragraph before, where have we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? And if you're an alcoholic like me, the answer would probably be everywhere, because that's just the way we are.
Yep.
Okay, we're on the next paragraph on page 69. Whatever our ideals turn out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in doing so. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it.
Yeah, and that's really important here. At the very end here in meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter, and the right answer will come if we want it. Again, there's a reliance on your higher power. It is a question on how to do it, to have a sex relationship that's better, that is natural and without selfishness, and without harm. And if there has been harm, you've got to be willing to make amends, and provided that you don't bring still more harm. That's a big caveat to that activity. So you treat sex just like you would any other problem. It just happens to be one that is highlighted here, and one that needs to be focused on for some period of time so that you improve your basic relationship with other people. Bill?
Yeah, the book has another prayer right here in this paragraph where it says, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. Anytime it says we ask or we ask God, that's a prayer. There was a prayer in the previous paragraph, and there's a prayer here. So far, we've got two prayers in the sex inventory. Okay, we're down on the bottom of the page of 69. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
Yeah, so avoid the extremes, basically, is what this is saying, and counsel with other people and or it is desirable, but let your higher power be the final judge. Pretty simple and straightforward right there. Bill?
Yeah, like Leo just said, you can get counsel with other people, with your network, with your sponsor or whatever, but you let God be the final judge because God knows better than all of us put together. Okay, we're on the first new paragraph on page 70. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and we will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience.
Yeah, so really it's the idea here is the intent. So you make a mistake, which we're all going to make, and it's how you what was the intent to begin with? Was it on purpose? Was it accidental? In either case, if it turns out that you are remorseful in the end and you ask your higher power for guidance and forgiveness, you will get that, and you most likely will get a better feeling, and out of that you're going to come out of it in a positive way, and more than likely you're not going to drink. But if you have a dark side or a side that you're not sorry, that you're now letting the resentments get the best of you in regards to all of this, then it's very likely that you are in fact going to drink, and that's going to cause problems. So bottom line is mistakes are going to be made, but how you handle the mistakes once they're made is really dependent upon whether or not you're going to drink again or fall back into that, or if you're going to move forward as far as that goes. So this is really the kind of the starting into, if you make a mistake, how do you handle it, and then what do you do when you move forward with it, and hopefully it's the remorse, the apology, and the asking for forgiveness and guidance, and then moving forward in a positive way. Bill?
Yeah, the book is giving us a warning here. It tells us if we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. This is one of the few places in the book where it tells us if we don't do something according to what this book says, we're probably going to drink. There's about 6 different places all throughout this book where it tells us that we might drink or we're sure to drink again if we don't do what the book says, and this is one of them. If we keep harming others, we're quite sure to drink. And it says, they're not theorizing. These are facts out of our experience. This is the experience of the first 100 people that went through this process and came up with this program. And if they kept hurting people, they wound up drinking again. And if they stopped hurting people, they were able to stay sober. So he's giving us a warning here. Okay, the next paragraph. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, and for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. This takes us out of ourselves. It quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache.
Yeah, so again, this is a nice segue into helping others. And if you are having problems, one of the tried and true answers to overcoming those problems and troubles is to help other people. So you do it for your sanity and for the strength to do the right thing. And out of that, you will find yourself better able to focus on the right way to approach sex and have those positive and more wholesome relationships with other people. Bill?
Yeah, he's got the third prayer in here in the sex inventory. We earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance, and for strength to do the right thing. This is another prayer that he put in this here sex inventory. And he's telling us when we have sex problems, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. That's AA's solution for everything. Try to help somebody else. That takes you out of yourself, and that makes you forget about your own problems because you're trying to help somebody else get through their problems. And when you look at other people's problems, you realize that your problems really aren't all that bad. And this quiets the imperious urge. Some people will tell you if you're having issues with sex, go take a cold shower. AA says, go help somebody else. That takes you out of yourself, and that's AA's fix for everything. Okay, the next paragraph on page 70. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentments. We have begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can.
Yes, so this is a good review of everything that you've written down, making sure that you're thorough and complete. Make sure that you're being honest about it. You've been able to analyze your resentments, and out of doing that, you begin to overcome those resentments. You've begun to understand the destructiveness that is caused by these resentments. And, it says patience and goodwill towards all men, even our enemies. And I would say especially our enemies, because that's where we would like to focus on to make the amends and get better and healthier because of it. We do look at them as sick people, and remember back before where we this is on page 67. This is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry, thy will be done, which is the fourth step prayer. And we've listed the people we have hurt by our conduct, and we're getting kind of moving into the next few steps and willing to straighten them out out the past if we can. And again, we'll talk more about that as we get to our step 8 and 9. But this is the beginnings of that process there. Bill?
Yeah, this is a promise in here. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. This is what happens after we start going through this process and we start doing the working steps and writing everything down and looking at ourselves. This is a personality change. This is when we're starting to get better. This doesn't happen in steps 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3 sets us up to do the rest of the program. But as we start doing the working steps, we start looking at ourselves, we actually start to get better because we stop hating everybody's guts. We start looking at things differently. And we learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all. That's a personality change. That's the beginning of a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening. This starts to happen after we go through this process and look at ourselves so that we can see it's not the whole rest of the world. It's us also. Okay, we're on the bottom of page 70. In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself.
Absolutely. And we hope that you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him, and really have developed this this relationship with your higher power. This is not about working with you; it's about working with others, and allowing your higher power to come in and guide you and to do the right thing. You've begun to get faith or have faith. Remember, you have to believe first, and when you believe, then you can get faith. If you at least acknowledge that there is the potential of a higher power, you're off to on the right foot. And this thorough inventory is also giving you insight into your resentments, your fears, your harms, and your conduct. And again, we talked about the fears that you had earlier. That's the lose something that I have, not getting something that I want, or you will find out what I did. And so at the end of all of this, it's a really good place to be, and one of really good and positive growth. Bill?
Yeah, basically, Bill summed it up here. He's saying that this is a promise. God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from Him. You can't defeat self-will with self-will. You need God's help. God has to take our self-will away. We can't get rid of it by ourselves. And what's wrong with self-will? It blocks you off from God. That's what's blocking you off from the solution. My own self-will. That's keeping me blocked from getting to the solution, from getting spiritually fit or spiritually better. And then it says if you made a decision was step 3, and an inventory, that's step 4 of your grosser handicaps, you have made a good beginning. This is only a beginning. We have to go further. There's more stuff to do, but you made a good beginning by doing step 3 and step 4. And that's basically what Bill's telling us here. And that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you stepping in today, as always. We'll close things out with the Serenity Prayer and then open things up. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.